Hello, and welcome to the Producers Guild conversation with the creative team behind The Fight. We'd like to thank our friends at Magnolia for making this event possible. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today. Claudia Puig is the critic for NPR's Film Week and president of the LA Film Critics Association. Welcome, Claudia. Thank you for being here, and please take it away.
Thanks so much, Kyle. I am really thrilled to have with us today the Powerhouse team with The Fight. We have co-directors Elyse Steinberg, Eli Despres, Josh Kriegman, and producer Kerry Washington. Welcome.
Thanks.
Hi.
Your film is so fascinating. It explores the work of the ACLU, the wonderful work of the ACLU, and serious issues that they fight for in such an informative and entertaining way. It's powerful, it's illuminating, and it's essential. It couldn't be more timely and relevant as right now. I'm really glad that it's being made available before Election Day. And it's also a classic David and Goliath story. So I kind of wanted to ask all of you how you got involved. And we'll start with the three directors and then Kerry. So Elyse, would you like to say how you sort of a little bit about the origin story of this documentary?
Sure. Hi. Thanks, Claudia. Yeah, we're really excited to be here and to be talking, and that the film is out right now. You can see it on Hulu. So the way this film began was, it was, I think, as you may remember, since these last 4 years have been kind of a blur, but it was 4 years ago when Trump enacted his Muslim ban. And on that night, it was 7 days after he was inaugurated, and but on the night that he enacted his Muslim ban, protesters gathered at the airports, at the courthouses, and I was one of those protesters who headed to the courthouse, where inside ACLU attorney Lee Galerned was arguing for a stay of Trump's order. And when he emerged from the courthouse with his fist raised high, having won that stay, I was there, and I saw the expression on his face, and I felt, and I heard the crowd chanting ACLU, ACLU, and I just felt like, okay, this is a moment right now, one of the greatest civil rights battles of my lifetime, reminiscence of the 60s. This is what's going to be happening. This is going to be a David and Goliath story, as you said. And we need to be inside with these lawyers on the front lines as they fight the Trump administration. And I just, I'd always been interested in stories about lawyers. My mother had been a litigator who fought for immigrant rights. So I just, there was a little bit of a calling for myself that this was a film that I felt like that we should make.
That's a really interesting story. Go on. Yes.
Well, I was going to say, it's one of those moments that filmmakers, I think, really look for. At least actually the next day after this, after she was in this protest, she came in and she basically came into the office, practically broke down the door and just made a beeline straight for our whiteboard where we have ideas for future projects. And we had all been, I think, a little flattened by the Trump election and sort of trying to figure out, okay, like what do we do in this moment? And Elyse erased all of our ideas and wrote The Fight in big letters on the board and said, this is it, this is what we have to do. We have to get into the ACLU and tell the story of fighting against Trump in this time. And it was just one of those moments. Eli and I looked at each other and we were like, yeah, that's right. It was very clear to all three of us in that moment that it was exactly the story that we wanted to tell.
It sounds like it was a real aha moment for obvious reasons then. Eli, do you want to add to that?
I mean, it was just that we were nervous. It felt bigger than anything we had taken on, both in terms of the storytelling, and I think there were lots of unknowns. Like, can lawyers be exciting? And we didn't know the answer to that yet. We certainly found out, but it felt like a big leap. But man, it's been a ride.
Absolutely. Kerry, how did you get involved with it?
I was on the other side of the country watching Elyse, not knowing her, but watching the crowds on the East Coast and sending pizzas to the airports in LA and asking myself, like, who is on the ground with these lawyers, right? Like it felt to me like oh, these lawyers are going to be the real life heroes who are at the front lines of all of the attacks on human rights and civil liberties that we're going to come up against in the next 4 years. And like, who can we get to be in the trenches with these real heroes? So I started making calls to figure out like who, what filmmakers could maybe do that? How could I help make that happen? And I learned that the phenomenal team behind Wiener was already on it, that they had just made a similar call to their folks saying like, this is what we want to do next. And I was like, well, how do I help them make that happen? Like, how can I be of service to this incredibly talented group of filmmakers to get this made?
I know you've been very involved politically. We saw you at the Democratic Convention, of course. But I think in terms of production, this was your first documentary effort, right?
It was. So that was really fun. I mean, we love at Simpson Street to take on new challenges and to like adventurously dive into new area. For us, it's just like, is the passion there? Is it a narrative that we believe in? Is it a story worth telling? And does it center stories that maybe often get marginalized? So this felt like obviously that. And again, we really believe in the power of partnership. And so to come to be in the trenches with these filmmakers was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. If they'll have me, I want to get on this ride.
Well, Elyse, I wanted to ask you how you came up with the structure, because it was, you don't see very many films that have 3 directors, but I would think with the structure that you did, following the different lawyers around, you could have used even more directors. I don't know, but how is it that you came up with the structure?
Well, 2 things. First, the 3 directors thing, which people have been like, what, 3 directors? And I, just to like give a sense of like how it works. I mean, it's a train wreck,
An elegant train wreck.
An elegant train wreck, 3. No, the truth is that 3 allows for a tiebreaker. So you don't get locked in. And we worked all together on Wiener. I mean, Josh and I were co-directors, but Eli was an editor. And then the 3 of us have a production company and we do other projects where we're all 3 directors, but we divide our projects differently. This project, I was more in the field. I was with the lawyers along with a producer and a cinematographer. And so, but I was manning the field in New York, downtown Brooklyn, they have an office and we would travel everywhere. And Josh, who's also in New York, Josh and I would talk just like in Wiener, Josh was on the ground and I would be talking to him remotely about strategy and story and how we get in. And Eli is in LA in the West Coast and managing the edit and the story and keeping and conversations about story would happen with him. And so we really do find a way in the madness of 3 directors to kind of make it work with these films. We're not stepping on each other's toes with different roles. But in terms of story, I mean, I think actually since I just did the director breakdown, I will let Eli can talk about, I mean, really the edit was a huge feat. It was, I mean, incredibly hard. I think we all worked at it, but it was, I think Eli is he was like, lawyers and all of them and these complicated stories. How do I find a way to make this interesting? And Eli can maybe talk to how.
Oh, so was it in the editing process that you decided on those lawyers? Were there others?
No, but in terms of structure, I think Eli can really talk to the sort of like the way he sort of managed that. I don't know.
I mean, it was a huge pain in the butt. It was really to wrangle, but we had. I mean, it's not just Josh and Elyse and I. I mean, we had a team. The edit team is a bunch of masters. Kim Roberts and Greg Fenton cut the movie with me, and they both have just ridiculous credits to their names. Food Inc. and Waiting for Superman, and I mean it just goes on and on. They're top of their game, and it was an unwieldy beast, and we all just tackled different pieces of it. I mean, weaving together first of all the legal, trying to simplify these very complex. These guys speak in Latin for God's sakes for no reason. And finding the balance between the stories was it was hard work. It was a marathon, not a sprint. I don't know the clean answer to your question, except we just beat on it until it's the movie slowly started to make more sense and move. I don't know. You guys watching, how did the edit come together? How did the structure of the movie take shape?
Well, I mean, I think one of the bigger challenges was rhythm, right? You're telling, multiple stories concurrently, and these are legal cases which have a natural rhythm to them, where the case comes up, it sort of becomes clear what the fight is, obviously all the work and the prep, and then it culminates in this hearing in court, and then the decision. But we had to find a way, we told a number of those and had to find a way to preserve the rhythm of those cases, but also preserve the rhythm of the film as a whole, right? And I think that was a huge editing feat, and certainly one of the major structural challenges.
I mean, one thing that's nice is you can, when telling multiple stories and weaving them together, is you can have one storyline answer a question that a first one raises, or an emotional beat. You can set up tension in one scene, in one storyline, and release it in another. There's some advantages to doing the weave.
Right.
But I would think, like they always say that you find, the filmmakers find the film in the editing room, and I would think nowhere is this more the case than in a documentary where you have hundreds of hours, and you are, this classically is like you're picking and choosing all these different elements. How you filmed for how many years and how many hours, and tell us a little bit about that process.
So,
Elyse.
Yeah, no. So we filmed for about 3 years, and we went, I think Kerry says, we went where the fight was. So we began, Lee was the first person that we made contact with. He gave us the access. He had the big case, which was the Muslim ban. So we were following Lee. And then Lee's case, while we were following him, he started hearing about families who are separated at the border, and maybe there's a case there. And so we started following that story, and then that became the big family separation case. And then while we're with Lee, we would just, we planted our cameras at the ACLU national office, and we're waiting to see what were the big cases and who were the people that were, spearheading them. And then I think I remember being with Lee and then hearing, oh, wow, there is a lawyer who's trying to get access to her client to get an abortion, and the government is stopping her from accessing her abortion. And I just, barged in, was like, hey, Bridget, let us in. And she's like, okay. And then I'd be like, no, Kerry Washington, she's producing this. Okay, in that case.
So Kerry's name was bandied about there.
Oh yeah, fully banded. There is like, and so that was the process. It was just going to just lawyers following the fight. And the truth is, in terms of who the cases were, for the most part, when we got to the edit state, I think we knew these were the cases that had a full beginning, middle, and end. These are the cases that were the biggest civil rights cases that ACLU fought during the Trump administration. I mean, that's what you see. So we followed many different kinds of stories. I think, I'm sure, Kerry, you remember like hearing us talk about so many different ones, and like, what's going to happen? And it just kept on changing until, the film, it was clear that these were the biggest cases.
I feel like there almost needs to be a sequel, because that storyline with Lee, where he has that really moving, arranging the reuniting of the mother and daughter on the stairs there. I was thinking about that a lot during this past week when we heard about the 540 children who's, were separated from their parents. And I wondered if you guys have kept in touch with the ACLU, if they're involved in that effort as well.
Yeah, we're still in touch with them. Lee called me this weekend, and he said, okay, like family separation is big. Can our film, like we need the film out there in bigger ways. And just, it's like different issues suddenly gain the spotlight. And right now with the new report about how many families are still separated from their children, it's just horrifying. But yeah, no, we're in touch with the ACLU regularly. They want the world to see this film right now. as much as anybody else, with the stakes being as high as they are.
The ACLU has been actually instrumental, sort of outside of their normal legal mandate, instrumental in reuniting the families that have gotten back together, working with other NGOs down in Guatemala, going door to door and trying to find families of these that have had their children taken away. And of course, COVID has totally thrown a huge wrench into that process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your crew was there, or at least part of your crew was there, I guess, at the ACLU offices following Charlottesville and the death of Heather Heyer, and that must have been a really hard day to be filming. And I know you spoke with Jeffrey Robinson, the deputy legal director, who spoke about disagreeing with the decision of the ACLU defending the white supremacist groups. And did you get any pushback from the folks that day? Or that seems like a really difficult day to have been filming. Eli or Josh, do you want to respond to that?
No, I mean, it's a testament to the ACLU that they were, as you can see in the film, they were very open about sort of the reality of how that event sort of landed and kind of unfolded within the organization over the course of the time that was happening. And we were there, and they were happy to have us capturing it. I think that in the film, we really tried to represent kind of the way that it landed in the lives of the lawyers that we were principally following. And I think it really, it was a punch in the gut for them in the same way that it was for the rest of us, for all of us. And you can see in the film just how intense it was to receive the news of that event and sort of wrestle with it, both personally, but then in a larger way within the entire organization.
Kerry,
it's one of the parts of the film that I'm most proud of, though, because I think, you can tell this is not a propaganda film about the ACLU, right? This is a film about what it really takes to be willing to be on the front lines of human rights and civil liberties. And it's not always a black and white issue. And the ACLU is courageous in their willingness to continually grapple with this issue and redefine what their mission means to them. And the fact that we could be part of that moment to capture it is important. It's important to me that people know that there's never been a sitting president since the founding of the ACLU that hasn't been sued by the ACLU. Democratic presidents have been sued, Republican presidents have been sued, that human rights and civil liberties are, in every generation, we have to continue to fight for them and earn this democracy. So I'm really proud that we were able to capture that in the film. And as Josh said, I have a great deal of respect about how they continue to grapple with these issues to kind of fulfill their mission with as much dignity and transparency as possible.
Yeah, even when they're difficult and complicated. And yeah, absolutely. It can't be very easy to capture what they do on a daily basis, all the lawyers, and the depth of their hard work and their commitment, and yet you got the salient points. What I love for some of those personal moments, like their child rearing tensions, or that Lee's getting annoyed with his cell phones, and did you have a lot of conversations about making sure that those human moments were a part of the overall picture? Or did those just kind of happen organically?
I think we knew from the jump. The way that we like to make movies is connect to these larger issues through sort of personal stories, and it's the way that we feel empathy ourselves for our subjects, watching them wrangle their kids or try to work the fax machine. That's a dated reference.
We all got it.
Yeah, but just history's manifest in the struggle of the individual, and sometimes that struggle is just getting your kid in their snowsuit and getting them out the door. And I think that the play between pathos and humor in those scenes is critical to making the audience ride with them. I mean, it's one thing to know that the fate of the planet is on their shoulders, and it's another thing entirely to watch them hold up the world while trying to make it through traffic on time for their Zoom call.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of character development, you you idolize Superman, but you relate to Clark Kent, right? Clark Kent is your way in. And so we had to reveal that part of these folks. And I think it also serves another really beautiful purpose in the film, in that we did want to hold up these lawyers as the Avengers, right? The modern day Avengers. But we also wanted people to realize that they are just people, right? They are just people with law degrees. So you may not have a law degree, but each and every one of us has some sort of skill that we can offer toward the betterment of humanity, whether it's like baking cookies and donating that money to the ACLU, or showing up before the Supreme Court, and everything in between. And so to show their humanity is what allows our audience to say, like, oh, I have the utmost respect and awe for what they're doing, but I also see myself in that possibility. I also am invited to ask myself, what can I do to be part of the solution?
Well, speaking of seeing yourself, one of the things I thought about as I was watching was, I hope that kids are watching this, or teenagers, or people who are maybe going to think about becoming lawyers because of this film. I'd love to hear what you've heard back from people in regard to that, and also any efforts to show it at schools. Elyse, you're smiling. Kerry, you're nodding.
Just totally agree. I think the young people, I mean, the film is PG-13, and you hear the bleeps for Dale's for a reason. I mean, it was really important that we got that rating so that kids can see this, and the response that we've gotten for kids that have seen it, it's just been just so meaningful and impactful. I think at Sundance, there was a community screening, and there were so many young kids, high schoolers, who were just like, it just energized them. They felt so touched by it, and it really, it made us feel so proud of the work, and of the work that these guys did, and that we're hoping for that kind of impact to happen. And the responses that we've gotten, I think we also did something with the ACLU for high school students, and just like the love that I think that we got, and that the film is getting, and the more that they can get, just to enter. I mean, the kids out there, the sense that I'm getting is just like, they're warriors, social justice warriors, and they've had to be based upon where we are right now. And this film is about, social justice warriors. These lawyers are out there. They're fighting the good fight, and we get to see it, and we get to see they get knocked down, they get tired, and then we see them win. And it's a testament to persistence, and anybody can do that.
What was really cool, that screening that Lisa's talking about, we did, it was the four of us and a couple of our attorneys, three of our attorneys, for 1,500 high school seniors. And watching the chat go by, it was on Zoom, and watching the chat just whip by with these kids. I mean, they were lit up, and it was hard. I felt like, oh my God, it's going to be okay. Got us, right? Like, these kids are so smart and paying attention in a way that I wasn't when I was their age. It was, I don't know, I would say that in the rollout of the movie, that was just a highlight for me. Feeling connected.
Yeah, definitely. And that idea of demystifying the ACLU, because we tend to think of it as this monolithic institution, but we don't think of it as people on the ground doing the work. And so to see young people witness a pathway, oh, that's another way you make change, because we know you can march in the streets, and we're being told that voting is the way, but there are these other structural pathways to fight for justice that are respectable ways of walking in the world. And it's so exciting to see young people engage with it, and everybody, for other people to say, I've always known about the ACLU, but to have a face to know that those lawyers are, mothers and fathers and husbands and wives, and that it's really fun for people to personalize the work in that way.
Absolutely. I saw it at Sundance, and I think I saw it back to back with Just Kids. So I remember coming out
Oh,
thinking
wow.
the same thing, like, we're going to be okay. It's like this
Yeah.
next generation of activists,
Yeah.
they're there. And yeah, it's really.
If there has been one thing that this awful administration has given us, it has been this generation of activists that
warriors,
have, that have not just sort of woken up to what's needed, but also they have so much more synergy across issues than any other generation, right? Like previous to now, you would see how like women's issues were women's issues and immigrants issues were immigrants issues. And even in our film, you see how like, no, actually the issue of how we treat immigrants is as important to the issue of reproductive rights, that these are all really, the cross sections are vital, and that we unify across these divisions is vital to our survival.
Absolutely. Well, I love what Dale Ho said in the film. If you're not going to be a civil rights attorney at this moment, then when? And I thought, if you're not going to make this movie now, then when would you ever make it?
That's right. That's right.
But you started it, back when the Muslim ban was happening. And then, of course, things have gotten worse.
We all had a feeling they might.
Yeah,
sure.
And I think also, part of the reason I think why it was a no-brainer for us is because we were like, yeah, we want to make a movie about heroes. Like, why not? Like, it's obviously, there's a lot of, these are dark times in a lot of ways. And I think we often feel inundated with pretty dark stories. And this is in contrast to that. This is like a unabashed invitation to feel hope and to feel inspired and to feel energized at a moment when we need that, I think, perhaps more than ever.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, you set about to make a verite documentary where you're following people all the time. It's a huge commitment. Like, I think Kerry's made like so many other projects while this one is still been going on. It's like, she was on Broadway, she had her Hulu series. Like, our film was a while ago, but it's like, it's gonna come. And it's like, these talks take a while. And when you decide to do this, when we decided to do this, it's like, okay, like you gotta like the people that you're gonna spend a lot of time with. And I just remember feeling like every day that I would go downtown and be with Lee or Dale, I would just feel better. And I just felt like I'd come back. I was like, I had a much better day than the days that I weren't at the ACLU. And I felt inspired. I felt like, okay, they're out there, they're doing this. We're showing what this legal work really looks like. And I felt like, if we can try to get that little piece of feeling that I'm getting when I'm with these guys into the film, then everyone could feel that way. Everyone could feel that sense of hope and, as Josh was saying, an invitation to feel good, that we can do something. And that was worth it. But yeah, it was just wanting to spend time.
It's so funny because now when we read articles, right, I'll read a tragic headline of something that the administration has done or something that's going on in the world. But I know that a paragraph or two in, I'm going to see Lee's name or I'm going to see Dale's name because I know that they're on it. I know that they're on it. I know that Bridget is on it and she's going to be in the article if I just keep going. And that is really encouraging to know that they're there. And I think in particular, this moment, there's a lot of talk about Election Day. And I think it's really important as we move toward it that we know that this definitely will be an ongoing fight. However long the fight is on, exactly what happens on Election Day itself is open. And then even, after the election, this is an ongoing fight. And it's so important that people are invited into this fight because they're fighting for us, right? This is our fight. And to be able to have a heightened awareness around what that looks like and to really feel like it belongs to all of us, it feels so vital in this moment.
Yeah, the timing is absolutely, it's been vital for 4 years and it's more vital every day. And I think everyone, Elyse, to your point about feeling that hope and that sense of inspiration, we feel it when we watch it. But I wonder what kind of logistical challenges you faced to bring us that sense of hope. What were some of the biggest logistical challenges that came up? Okay, you're rolling your eyes, Eli.
I would say, I mean, the first was getting access to the ACLU. That was a huge challenge. That did not come easy. We had gone to the ACLU after we first met Lee, and Lee brought us to the decision makers at the ACLU. And we pitched them our vision, and we said, we want to be inside. We want to follow all your twists and turns and your, in the meetings at home. And they said, nope, sorry. We appreciate your effort, but there's no way we're going to let you do this. And I think all of us were like, okay, we can work with this.
We don't take no very easily. Anyway,
Not so much.
Okay, who wants to make the first follow-up phone
Okay, we can do this. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, we began just filming with Lee. And then I think we built up a kind of trust and understanding. And then we filmed with Bridget, and we just started to get comfortable. They started to understand us, we understood them, and we were better able to talk about how we make this film in collaboration. And I mean, we were completely independent, but how were we going to make this film with them? And I think they just started to realize this is just an unprecedented moment, that this film was so needed that it was worth the risk of having, the Wiener directors film inside with them. But yeah, I mean, that's one challenge. I'm sure you guys can think of other challenges.
Well, it's a lot of stories with court cases all over the country, and every day the president is tweeting out some new insanity, and so he tweets something, and Elyse would be all like, "Are you guys sending somebody? What's happening?" And we'd have our amazing co-producer Sean McGing and Maya Seidler were instrumental in logging. I think the most crews that we fielded at a time were 3, but just zigzagging all over the country, Kansas City and Texas, and I can't even remember if we went to Guatemala or not. Yes. So it was more frequent flyer miles, I think, than any of us have experienced on any other project. It was just
And it's the price you pay for this kind of film. There's that one of my favorite scenes in the film is Dale finding out the verdict on the Supreme Court case that he argued, and what you don't know when you watch that scene is. The Supreme Court hands down its decisions on Mondays, every Monday for some number of weeks, but they don't tell you ahead of time which decisions they're going to be announcing. And so the way that everyone finds out is Monday morning at 9 a.m. They're clicking refresh on the browser, as you see Dale do. But we had to be with him every Monday. So wherever he was in the world, whatever he was doing, we went out to California at one point because he had some unrelated event out there, and we just had to be with him. I think we were with him at like a car dealership on one Monday because he's living his life, and we're like, we got to be with you every Monday. And then of course, the way of course it worked out is it was the last possible Monday that he actually got the decision. So there were a lot of hours logged that you don't see, which you should be grateful for.
Well, it's interesting. Speaking of those things that are not logged, we've all collectively kind of grown up on courtroom dramas and courtroom thrillers, and we think we know how lawyers work, but of course that's not exactly how they work. How did you talked about the sort of arcane legal maneuverings and the things that might seem tedious to people, and yet you've got to get some ideas across. So how did you synthesize all that? And did you kind of do it collectively and talk about, do we leave this part in, or how does that process even work?
I mean, it's lots of conversations between all of us, like dialing up and down the level of complexity and trying to figure out what are the, it's wonderful as an audience member, I love to feel like I've gotten some sort of expertise that lets me watch a scene or a moment in a new way. And that's true with, I think, legal cases. too. You get enough information that like, oh my God, when they say that word pretext, it's like I know what's going to happen here. He's either going to get through. This is important. And sort of figuring out what the through line is that to hang each case on I'm sad that having we've been making documentaries for some time and we haven't gotten much better at anything but trial and error for learning how to titrate that. We still have to make scenes terrible before we can make them good. But it's a lot of that. It's a lot of playing. And
Elyse, you were nodding. Do you want to add to that too?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely, that in terms of the story construction and the editing, this was one piece. These cases are complicated. The census is it's like confusing. What is a citizenship question? How, I mean, I was always like, how are we going to say this and do this in a way that it's not going to bore our audiences? And I think what Eli is saying, the key, we make verite films about, and what draws you is the people. Like, this isn't an essay doc. It's about the lawyers and their experiences and their hopes and their ups and downs. And so you want to kind of get the information in a way that is entertaining, but without like, okay, we're going to, show you a graph here about everything that's happened. And so finding a way to do that, I think that scene where we do sort of finding ways to get that exposition in, if that is entertaining. So it's like, Dale is walking and then he hears the news coming through, and funny montages, or just different ways of getting that information across, which, I think Eli and some of our team, it was just like that was one piece of the story challenge. I will say another story challenge that I have wanted to say, by the way, was that I think a big thing was trying structurally, almost all of these stories could have been their own movie. They all were these grand cases. We could have we could have had one case end and the other one begin, and we had to find a way to weave all of these stories in so it felt like one coherent narrative. And I think one of the things that we realized is that we had to have them all have their hearings at the same time, all have their verdicts at the same time. So we had to play with time to allow for the sort of story so that it felt like a real beginning, middle, and end. That was a big sort of structural challenge. And it relates to the challenge of the complexity of the cases, having to deal with all of them.
What have you heard from the attorneys who you depicted, and also from other ACLU attorneys, about the documentary in general?
One thing is that they all are working so hard in their individual lanes that they actually really loved being able to have a more intimate engagement with their coworkers. Like, they were able to witness more of their coworkers' journey. They hear in staff meetings, but they don't get to like really walk the emotional path with each other. And so that has been really wonderful to kind of see that that experience bloom between them across different departments.
So, and I also want to ask you, Kerry, what did you take away from this experience? What, after being a part of it, what was like the biggest lesson that, if you could call it a lesson, or the biggest takeaway for you?
About the subjects?
About the overall subject of human rights and civil liberties.
Because I would say one big takeaway for me was that I would go anywhere, anytime with these filmmakers, because they're amazing. They're phenomenal partners from beginning to end. But I think from our partners, I think it's the thing I talk about the most, this idea of like, and I've said it already, that they are superheroes, but they're just people. Because I think, I grew up in a household with like, we had a lot of canvas tote bags. They said NPR, or they said ACLU, right? Like that. I grew up in one of those viewers like you homes where like, so the ACLU was a system. It was like a big machine. And what I really learned, was that like in any business, like in any endeavor, it's people, it's teams of people coming together in their passion to bring their expertise to create something magnificent. And you know, we work in a field where the thing we come together over, our shared passion, is narrative and storytelling. And so we come together to try to create something wonderful, but they come together to try to protect our rights and liberties. They come together in issues of life and death. And that is just, it's so inspiring. And so any moment we would even feel like, you know, the slightest frustration of like, are we going to have our budget? Or, you know, what is the story here? Or, you know, is this going to be the Monday? Like whatever, it's like you compare our anxiety and what we're up against to what they're up against. And you just like, you keep marching forward to do whatever good you can do.
Well, and isn't that what Dale says? It's not going to be the lawyers and the courts. It's going to be people who turn this ship around. And
yeah.
So that's timely with election day looming 8 days away.
I know when he said that, it was like, you want to write that monologue for an actor.
Exactly.
It's like, oh my God.
You had a lot of quotable quotes like that. Yeah.
He really is amazing. He's amazing.
Well, that's a perfect note to wrap this up on. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for your important and essential film. Elyse, Eli, Josh, and Kerry, thank you for speaking with us today. And we'll cross our fingers for the election.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you. From your mouth to God's ears.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.